And we're back. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Think Bunker. Today we'll be going over the M1915 CSRG Chauchat. Now, as per usual, if you're a first-time viewer, welcome to the channel. We're glad that in some capacity you found interest here, and hopefully you'll stick around. We have other kinds of content that we produce here, however, that could be a bit slow because we don't exactly do this for a living. If you're a recurring viewer, welcome back. We're very happy that and especially I am very happy that you have taken severe interest in this type of content. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, the design and purpose of the M1915 or the Chauchat was it was designed by France. It fired the 8mm Lebel cartridge, which was patented in 1886 or 1884, somewhere in there, and it was also in tandem designed for the rifle, the 1884 Lebel. Now, which right off the bat, this weapon, the Chauchat, was adopted in 1915. The cartridge it fires was used 20 years after the American Civil War. Just put that into perspective. Just right out of the gate, this sets a trend for France throughout history up until the 60s, even into the 60s, by just using outdated equipment, just severely outdated equipment. Now, I understand that things can be reliable all the way to a certain point, but given how these rifles were built, these bolt action rifles that the French were using, they were severely, how could you say, outdated in comparison to what the Americans, the British, or the Germans were bringing to the battlefield. The Mauser, the 1903, the Lee Enfield. So, just it's awfully outdated, and you'll see in a minute what I refer to when I say that. Now, around this time in history, obviously, machine guns started coming about. Machine guns, for those who don't know, I assume you don't know, but why would I assume that? If you're here, you know what a machine gun is. It's a belt-fed weapon that pulls ammunition into the chamber, and specifically has to have a mechanism that actively pulls ammunition into the chamber, not just a mechanism that either you put forward or the weapon does automatically, or the magazine specifically, like a spring-loaded magazine in a bolt-action rifle that puts ammunition in the way of the chamber so you can feed rounds into it. It's belt-fed, and around this time, machine guns were just straight up emplacements. There was really no crew service picking this thing up, taking it across the field, moving in the battlefield, and setting it up to fire in a different firing position. There was none of that with the machine gun. It was just purely an emplacement. Great for defensive purposes, but this actually left a wide fire rate capability gap with your offensive infantry and the German or the enemy defensive infantry. This goes for both sides. The Americans kind of bridged the gap with the shotgun, but that didn't come to much. The M19, the M97 shotgun, which that didn't come till later, and so the defenders had a massive advantage. So, what if someone were to design a weapon that could be used as a machine gun, but still be man portable and operate as a separate unit on the battlefield? Well, that's what France did, and that's the Chauchat. If you look at the graphic below, the idea was to create a lighter machine gun. But in every respect, this is a rifle. Rifle bore. Has a selected fire rate, safe, semi-auto, but it's also built like a machine gun. It has the bipod, so it can be set up in a defensive, and also was used in defensive situations or in offensive situations. Now, a tactic built for this weapon, because hindsight's 2020, as I say this in 2024, the weapon was to be used in a tactic called marching fire or walking fire, wherein you put the weapon in semi and charge, or I say charge, march/walk at the enemy. Every time your right foot hit the ground, you would pull the trigger and the weapon would go off. The idea was that you were laying down suppressive fire while advancing. Needless to say, if you did this and survived, you didn't do it again. You just used the weapon in automatic mode and started blasting rounds at the enemy. This was a tactic that was not really used apart from training or first time users of a weapon like this. Another notable weapon that was used in this same tactic, or intended to be used with this same tactic, was the M1918 BAR, which I'll get into later. Another notable feature of the Chauchat is the magazine, which is what's called a crescent breather magazine, meaning that there are holes on the side. More on that in a minute. This is its design and purpose. Now we go to its service performance. There are three eras of performance with the M1915. The first is the First World War, obviously, where it was conceptualized and then eventually adopted. This rifle could fire roughly about, I believe, 4 rounds per second. It was decently fast for an offensive light machine gun, which I say decently. This was the only weapon to do this. And in the First World War, its service was really good. The machine gun itself, the machine gun rifle itself, was very reliable. However, the issues come in from the magazine. The magazine being in two parts. Two reasons why the magazine was unreliable. And that's for two reasons. If you look at the image on the bottom there's holes in the magazine because it's called a breather magazine. The reason it has these holes is because this is a crew served weapon operated by two men. First is the man with the actual rifle, the automatic rifle, and the second is the man with the spare ammunition, or just all the ammunition. The holes were there so that the assistant gunner can look at the magazine, because he's always positioned on the right, and would say, oh, okay, he's getting low on ammo, here's another mag. Insert another mag or hand the mag to the gunner, whichever one, how that dynamic operated on that two-man level, whichever one, that's what the assistant gunner was there for. And that's why those holes were there. This ended up backfiring because in the environment of a war period, let alone the First World War, where it's nothing but a pit of... you're just fighting in a giant bowl of mud, essentially. It will cause some issues with the weapon. Now, much like how people talk about ARs, a speck of dust and the AR is just jammed. I mean, that's not being true. That's not the same for the Chauchat. Well, no, it's the same thing for the Chauchat. That it's not true in that a little bit of dust or a little bit of dirt won't cause the weapon to fail catastrophically, or I say fail to cycle or anything like that. It's not good. It's not recommended. However, say you drop your magazine into a mud pit and now your magazine, all the crevices are and the spaces in between the ammunition is filled with mud, that's a bit more of an issue. So it's not a good thing to have. The intention was good, but the idea was flawed and should have been fixed relatively quickly or even after the war. Yeah, it wasn't. It was not at all. I'll get into that in a minute. I got a whole rant about that. The other issue was the magazine was built out of subpar materials, and because of cheapness, the magazine tended to crimp a lot, meaning that there was ammunition feeding failures. The retention clips would just break off or just get sheared really quickly. Unless you really were careful and took great care of these magazines would cause your weapon to fail. So overall, the service performance of the 1915 Chauchat in the First World War was pretty good. Overall, if you kept your magazine clean and you could not bang your magazine against every living thing ever, or every inanimate object, you had a very reliable firearm on your hands and a massive potential gap in firepower, especially on the offensive. This weapon was made for the offensive because this weapon then went on to serve in the Second World War with the French Army. Yeah, going back to my rant just for a second. Yeah, the French did not fix the magazine issues. Plus, the Chauchat had some other small minor issues, some small reliability, quality of life issues within the gun itself. So, what did the French do to fix the issues? Absolutely freaking nothing. They did nothing. I'm not even joking with you. They didn't make the magazines out of better parts. And they made more of these things. They made more of these machine guns. They made more magazines. And so it wasn't, okay, these are going to be early magazine types, and we're just going to cover up and plug the holes. And then there you go. In fact, it would be cheaper and actually cost less material to just leave the magazines completely sealed and no holes. That might sound stupid, but the thing is, you make the magazine and then you punch the holes in it. So if you don't punch the holes, you actually save time. I'm not even joking with you. It's stupid how little the French government looked at this thing. Oh, hey, we have issues with this weapon. What are we gonna do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's like French tanks. The FT, amazing vehicle, absolutely revolutionary by Renault, who basically, I'm not gonna lie, stole all the materials for the prototype FT. He was actually contracted to make other, or he was contracted to build components for other companies and their designs. And he just said, no, I'm going to do my own thing. Took materials, built the FT, based, absolutely, it was absolutely based. It was just an absolute unit on the battlefield. And it was a revolutionary concept. However, medium tanks tend to get bigger. Look at the US. They built the M2. Look at even the Soviets with the Vickers 6 ton, the Japanese, the Soviets with the T-26, and eventually the T-34. Heck, even I think it was like not the Polish, but the Czechs were building medium tanks as well, the Panzer 35 and 38s. What did France do? FT but bigger, slightly bigger, just same gun, by the way. Same gun, but slightly bigger. This is where I said that theme of France using outdated equipment came into play because, my word. Yeah, this thing worked good 10 years ago. It should be fine now. No, my friend, my brother in Christ, it did not work out fine. As there's a lot of French memes about it now. There's a lot of memes about France regarding the certain invasion. In World War II, the Chauchat, as a result, would fail. I wouldn't say its overall performance was it was all right. But it was rather a victim of circumstances and it's just lack of it's just lack of ability to function given the circumstances that this is a modernized war. It's it's like 20 years more advanced than the war you fought when you were incepted, and yet your government has changed you and prepared you very little for the upcoming war, and this is the result. The weapon was severely outdated by the time it went to service. You had weapons like the 1919, the Americans with the M1919 that was water cooled, and then over time they switched to air cooled barrels. They could have done those small changes to the weapon, to the show. Either replace the Chauchat with a better quality of life weapon, or fix the Chauchat and just trim down some of the issues with it. Nope, decided to do nothing with it. Just like the French tank doctrine. But hey, guys, Yamato class land ship. That went well, absolutely, right? No. Anyways, finally is the service in Vietnam, and I don't need to explain to you how poorly that went. You have a weapon that was designed for full size caliber ammunition with a 30-round magazine, and then you're fighting an AK. Everything the AK does, well, everything the Chauchat does, the AK does, but better. I'm not even joking with you. It just does it better. It has a faster fire rate, has the same magazine capacity. It's lighter and it's more portable because you don't have your center of gravity being held by a little foregrip in front of your trigger behind your magazine. And again, in Vietnam, you have the help of literally everyone and their mother in NATO, and also you have been like actually a pretty advanced military power with with your tank designs with oscillating turrets, your these APRL type designs, your AMX 13s. And yet you still are using this Chauchat as a cruise surf weapon. What is wrong with you? I mean, really? Like, you just make an FN mag or like an MG3 that takes 8mm. Why are you still using 8mm lapel? You are nearly, you are 20 years away from that round being 100 years old. I'm sorry. Just. I want you to understand what I'm saying here. The French were using a weapon that used ammunition that was nearly 100 years old, right? And I'm not talking about 100 years old like the 50 BMG, right? Like the 12.7 by 108 for the M250 cal, which has had changes and updates to it, how the ammunition fired, and the different powder ratios and pressure ratios than the ammunition itself. No. It's pretty much the same round. They just use this. They just put a different bullet, a slightly different bullet, and that's it. I'm sorry. What? So the 50 cal we know is reliable. 30 and there's a reason why we don't use 30-06 anymore. The 50 cal is reliable. The ammunition is just so reliable. That's why we use it. And yet the French are still in Vietnam using 8mm. What is wrong with them? Well, they're French, so there's a lot wrong with them. Oh my word! It's like French understanding of military and development of military technology is like their language. It's like one. It's not like it's 1-to-1. I take a look at their language. It's that the pronunciation seems about right. Then I look at how their language works. It goes, this is completely stupid. Yeah, the service in Vietnam was poor. The World War II was like, and the reason why the Chauchat failed in World War II was because your government failed you. They did nothing with you. They did nothing to prepare you for a potential and eventual upcoming war. This is the government's fault, not so much the weapon's fault. In Vietnam, like buddy, I cannot help you here. You are a geriatric old man who was given a rifle. Basically, you are the rifle. You are the geriatric old man. That's what the show shot was, and it's unfortunate that they put that thing into service in Vietnam. It should not even seen the front. It should have been. It was a museum piece. It should have been a museum piece by this point. It's incredibly unfortunate, especially to the service members who had to carry and fire and operate this thing in Vietnam. Now we move on to a very to now let me explain a little bit. The show shot beforehand in the First World War has a reputation of being very unreliable and being very subpar in performance. That's not the fault of the M1915. It's still the fault of the French, actually. It's like the fault of the M1918 30-06 show shot. See, America uses 30-06, which is 7.62 by, I believe, 61 to 64 millimeters. And the French use, of course, the 8mm lapel. Now, if you want, or I suggest you do, look up a picture of 30-30. You see up here at the top where it says 30-06, look up 30-03, which it's a ball shaped, not ball shaped, but the ammunition, the tip of the ammunition is ball shaped, unlike the fine points that we have now. Well, the 8mm lapel they were using at the time was the one with the smooth, rounded ball tip. So this ammunition was incredibly outdated. Anyways, the Americans wanted to have a. The Americans actually loved the M1915. And this is very rare that the Americans do. Sometimes foreign companies design something that America loves, and I'm not even talking about that they submit to the design board for the army to take a look at a weapons competition, see if they can adopt the weapon. No. This is the Americans saw the French using this, went, "That's awesome. I want to try it," and just picked it up, and then eventually the Americans just kept using it. Beautiful story, really. So the Americans wanted a version made in 30-06. The French government went about this by retooling the weapon for 30-06 in the cheapest way possible. I'm not even joking. It's the I if I understand it correctly, the okay, real quick to note, the initial magazine for the show shot was the magazine prototype that you see in the background. That was meant to be a box magazine. However, 8mm contours so heavily in comparison to 30-06. If you look at the cartridges down at the bottom, the one on the left is the 30-06. and the one on the right is 8mm Lebel. Notice how the Lebel cartridge tapers down till about the halfway point and then mates to the shell, to the round, but it tapers down continuously from the rim all the way to the halfway point. 30-06, on the other hand, doesn't barely, it's a 1 degree difference or so, tapers down till roughly about the 2/3 mark, and then mates to the bullet. So, with that in mind, properly understood, 8mm Lebel tends to curve a lot when stacking the magazine. That's why the Chauchat magazine is a half crescent. So, a new box bag had to be designed for the Chauchat. Not the one in the background. It's just a standard magazine that held 20 rounds for the 30-06. The bore, if I'm not mistaken, on the M1918 was not exchanged for a new bore chambered for 7.62 or 30 caliber, which, by the way, that's what 30-06 means. 30 caliber adopted in '06. So the 1903, the M1903 was actually adopted when the Army was using 1903 rounds, or the 1903 was adopted in tandem with the 1903 ammunition, similar to the Lebel ammunition and the Lebel rifle. But then America adopted the 30-06 ammunition, and most 1903s that you see are chambered for 30-06 as a result. America really loved 30-06 up until the 50s, actually, and or really the 60s. Anyways, the bore was chambered for 8mm in the M1915, but the French thought about it and said, well, hold on a minute. The bore is roughly the same size. It's only a half a millimeter off. But this then gets to the issue where it's not. It's just. It's slightly loose in the. Now, when the round travels down the bore is a little more looser than you'd like it to be, so it kind of jiggles around in the barrel just a little bit, and there's a lot of pressure loss, so the ammunition becomes less accurate and has less velocity than that of the 8mm Lebel. Though consistent, this is hard to replicate. Furthermore, the chamber was not. It, overall, the French conversion to 30-06 for the Chauchat was botched to the moon. As a result, the Americans, if you look at the image on the left, the two images on the left, the Americans would just use the M1915 anyways. They would use the M1918 for training purposes, which didn't have, due to the increased velocity and power of the 30-06, the mechanism of the Chauchat would come back and smack you in the jaw. Speaking of that, I forgot to mention at the design part, the barrel on the Chauchat is it. I can't remember the term exactly, but it reciprocates with the bolt, much like how the M. If you look at footage of an M250, which you more certainly probably have, the barrel moves as it fires. That's exactly the same thing happening here. In fact, the M1918 Chauchat would go on to inspire a different sort of similar, actually not sort of similar, a different weapon that was designed for the same role as the Chauchat of a automatic rifle, but was built lighter. That would be the BAR. But that's the next brief. Overall, the American Chauchat is where a lot of the reliability myths about the Chauchat come into play. While it's talking about the same kind of weapon, true, it's talking about a different variant of it, the M1918, which is very unfortunate that this thing exists and the French government botched it so badly. And what did it start? Well, it started a class of weapon that were essentially, or are, the predecessors to the assault rifles. You could call these the first assault rifles. In fact, I have dubbed the BAR as the first assault rifle in the past. However, I believe this honor goes to the Chauchat. The Chauchat is, if you look at all these weapons here, if you ask me, well, Ethan, are these rifles or machine guns? And I'd say yes, they're both. The Bren gun, the Type 11, I don't know, the Type 11 is a little weird. It's Asian, so it always is. I mean, they came up with anime, so The Chauchat and the BAR, some lean into the more machine gunny role, kind of like the Chauchat and the Type 11, and some lean more as rifles, kind of like such as the BAR and the Bren gun, magazine fed, rifled, box. Well, when I say magazine, I mean like box mag, not fed by a belt. So properly understood, this kind of weapon doctrinally was there to provide light machine gun automatic fire support to your rifleman to bridge the gap, because you had issues where at long range your rifleman could engage targets with no problem, being able to hit them and maintain fire. But as you got closer, the faster you started to lack the fire rate necessary to keep up the pressure. So this is why the submachine gun exists. But the submachine gun, if properly understood, is just outside of point blank. Not really worth it. It's just slightly farther range than pistols. Pistols because of the longer barrels. So these kinds of weapons would be used in order to bridge the gap between firearm and fire rate capacity. Because, simply put, these weapons could be whipped around the corner and spray the enemy at medium close distance. Medium close distance. And this is the ideal operating range of these weapons. These weapons didn't need to be packed up, moved to a different location, and then used again. Even for universal machine guns like the 1919 or the German MG34 and 42, you would still have to pick them up, set them down, lay out your ammunition, start firing. You had to do a little bit of setup. These weapons, not the same. You could pick these up, point them around a corner, and fire them. Look, these weapons are designed to be used in the offensive. Although they could be used in the defensive, they're very much meant to be used offensively to sustain high fire rates. This would then go on to have Germany, because Germany did not have a weapon like this, although they were advanced when it came to the build and design of their universal machine gun. When it came to them having to bridge the gap of fire rate capacity with their rifles, they didn't have that. That's why the Sturmgewehr was then created. The Sturmgewehr used an intermediate cartridge, which was just overall better for high fire rate automatic fire than the American M2, and that's where it created the assault rifle. The assault rifle, understood properly, would be a weapon that was meant to support the basic infantry, your riflemen, and engage the enemy at medium to medium long range, medium close distance, while maintaining accurate automatic fire. Then when your assault rifles, say your AKs, your M16s, took over the line as your battle rifles, what happened to the assault rifles? Well, they evolved into the SAW, or the squad automatic weapons. It's essentially just smaller weapons that are meant to be pick up fire. You could fire from standing fire. They're not really meant to be placed and set up. So, with that in mind, the Chauchat started all of this. It was a way for the French, the Anton forces, to use and utilize automatic rifle fire with maintaining accuracy to keep up the pressure and to provide the same supportive benefits of a machine gun in a lighter, more mobile, and better handleable package. Alright, we have reached the end. Thank you for watching this video all the way through, if you're at this point. If I did a stupid and got something wrong, or you want to comment on something, feel free to comment. I love to hear what you guys want to think. If you have a video suggestion about a certain piece of equipment you want to talk about that we could do a brief on, shoot me a comment. You want me to talk about the development of AK-47s? You want me to talk about the development of the M16, of the 1911, of the, talk about the fact that the reason why 45 ACP was used by the U.S. Army was because of Indians, opium, and cows. I'm not even joking. I could explain it, and if you want me to explain it to you, I will eventually. But if you want me to speed up that process, send me a comment. I will see about doing it. We've had entire briefs done because one guy left one comment suggesting 3 briefs. I kid you not. Thank you, William, for that, by the way. Anyways, with that in mind, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a little something about the Chauchat. It's a weapon kind of marred by history and by reputation, as history does. And our job is to come out here and to try to clear the air a little bit and to find the objective truth and how these things operated and how these things were looked at. So, with that in mind, thank you for watching. Now get back to work.